Moving abroad is more than just packing your bags and jumping on a plane. There's some things you need to know to avoid some really common mistakes that a lot of people make. So I'm going to tell you the 3 most common ones that I see as someone who's lived abroad for 5 years, runs a community for 20,000 women who are abroad or want to move abroad, and has coached people in this area for 5 years. I'm going to tell you 3 things you need to make sure you don't do. Hi, my name is Roshida. I live in Mexico City, and I am the co-founder of Exodus Summit. Today, I'm going to help you make some mistakes I have seen people make, and I'm also going to give you some advice if you've already made those mistakes. When it comes to relocating internationally, I see people make the same mistakes over and over again. The common mistakes I see people making when moving abroad is following other people instead of doing their own research, moving too quickly, and last, feeling like their move has to be permanent, one place and done move, when that's not the case. My number 1 mistake is making sure you're not following people because you see people talk about a city a lot and it sounds good, and you're actually doing the right research you need to do to make sure that that city is right for you. Many people assume that if a country works for some people, it's going to work for them. That's not always the case. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups for people who want to move abroad, and one of the most common questions I see is, okay, but how much does it cost to live there? Which in a vacuum is a great question, right? By itself, good question. The issue is that the answer often comes in a vacuum as well, with not enough context to kind of figure out whether that answer is good enough for you. So I'll see people say, oh, it costs me $700 a month to live in this city. What they don't say is what kind of housing they're in. Is it luxury? Is it, middle of the road? Is it below the standards that you, as someone who's researching, are looking for? They often don't say what kind of neighborhood they live in or what they eat. Do they eat out a lot? Do they cook at home every day? If they do go out to eat, what kind of places are they going out to eat? Are they driving? Do they own a car and they drive? Or do they take public transportation everywhere they go? For example, let's think about transportation costs. I live in Mexico City. I'm a public transportation girly. I love it. When I take the train to get where I'm going, I take the metro, it costs me about 25 cents to go wherever I want to go. When I take the bus, it costs me about, let's call it 35 or 40 cents. When I don't take public transportation and I take an Uber instead, my costs go from about 25 cents to about $8, $9, $10. That's a big jump, right? And if you're doing this every day, if someone's in a similar situation is taking public transportation every day, but you don't like it, so you'd rather take an Uber, that's a big difference in the cost of living that you're not going to know about simply by asking them, what are your bills each month? What does it cost you to live in the city? What's your cost of living each month is not going to get you to those answers. And so what I really want you to do is to do some research on your own. Ask people good questions. If someone tells you, if someone's willing to tell you what it costs them to live in the city, I think it's fair to ask some follow-up questions. Now, people online don't owe you all the answers about their life. So if they, say like, oh no, I've given you enough, they've given you enough. But I do think it is worth asking more questions so you can figure out more things, right? A lot of times in the same category, what I'm looking for in a city might not be what you're looking for in a city. I love Mexico City. It's huge, it's loud, it's dense, there's a lot of people. Someone's gonna bump into you every day. It is crowded. Love it. Other people come here and they're like, get me out of here as soon as possible. What is this madness? I don't want it. Fair, right? Just because I love it doesn't mean someone else will. So I think getting in community with people who are living in cities you consider is a really good way to see whether this is a city that will work for you, and asking them smart questions. What do they like about it? What do they not like about it? Do that so that you can get a better idea of what is working for people and what is not working for people in these cities, and see if is it giving what you want, right? Is this city giving what you want, or are you going to have to find another one? A related mistake that I see people making is making rushed decisions about their move abroad, kind of moving too quickly. So the election just happened in the US, and for a lot of us, those results were terrible. You don't have to tell me in the comments if you're happy with the results. You can keep that to yourself. That can be an inside thought. But for a lot of us, the results were terrible. And what that means is that there's been a huge uptick in people searching about moving abroad. You can see in the Google trend, a lot of people are like, how do I get out of the US? How do I get out of the US? What are we doing? I don't like it. I don't want it. So because of that, there's a lot of like more chatter in the move abroad space right now. And not all of it is very helpful or productive. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Because you're not going to follow unhelpful or unproductive advice because you're doing your own research and you're taking your time. Making rush decisions like, I need to move abroad now. It is November, I need to move abroad before the end of December, or I need to move abroad before inauguration. Not a bad thought if you've had this on your mind for a while. And not a terribly bad thought if you're willing to move again after your first destination. Another way this could work for you is if you move to a city that is kind of a soft landing from the US, so your transition won't be too tough. I made a video about that recently, and you can watch it up there. I'll also link to it in the description. But if you are not doing one of those three things, I'd love it if you could slow down on your move and make a plan. There are a lot of things to consider in your move. Where are you going? How are you going to get health care? How are you going to get residency or a visa to stay there? What are you going to do with your home and your stuff? What are you going to do with the people you love and your pets? Are you bringing some of the people with you? Are you leaving all the people behind? What are the costs of your move and the costs where you're going? What are you doing for actual income? These are all things to consider when you're moving abroad, and it's hard to get a handle on all those things in a month. Not impossible. But if you're already stressed and overwhelmed, it's honestly really, really hard to do in a month. And so I want you to slow down a bit and work through a plan, create a plan that helps with these things. Now, I mentioned before, but I lead a community of 20,000 Black women, and we talk about this every day. So if you're not already in the Exodus Summit community on Facebook, join us at exodussummit.com/community, and that's a great place to start your planning process. I briefly mentioned this before, but one of the mistakes that people make, and also a solution to the other two mistakes that people make, is thinking that your move has to be permanent or that you have to stay in the first place you move to. You don't. You're not a tree. When you packed your bags and left California and went to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, there was no rule in place that says you have to stay there, right? If you don't like it, pack your bags again and go somewhere else. Pack your bags again, go to another city in the same country. Don't like that? Go to another country and check it out. A lot of times people they tell their family, I'm moving abroad, I'm doing this thing. And then they feel kind of like trapped in this box. Like, if I've moved to Merida and it doesn't work out, people will think I failed. No, move somewhere else, right? If you don't love it, move somewhere else. And if you can't find another place around the world that you love more than you loved the US, questionable. But if you can't, move back to the US. There's still no failure. You still spent years months, however long it was, soaking up a different culture in a different place and got to have so many more experiences. All right, to sum this all up, the 3 mistakes I want you to avoid are following other people. Even if you really want to be in community, I get it, but do your own research. So following other people instead of doing your own research, making rushed decisions and moving too quickly, and thinking that your first move has to be your best and only move. It doesn't. It doesn't. Find an easy transition place like I mentioned in my last video. Stay there for a while. Go somewhere else, right? These are all great choices to make if it gets you closer to your goal. So with that said, let me know in the comments if you have made any move abroad mistakes, or if you've moved abroad, if there's anything you should have done differently, or you feel like, I would have had a better experience if I did this thing differently. And if you haven't moved abroad yet, tell me in the comments what's holding you back. Let me know. All right? And until next time, adios.